have a motion to amend, I'll make sure I'm right, the minutes to read from, what did it say before?
It said, something to the effect of, Ms. Diliberto, expressed concern about not being on more than, being on more than, because I didn't have more committees, and I'm proposing to insert than 2 committees to properly reflect, the spirit of it. In other words, I'm not suggesting that I was on 5 committees and wanted to be on more. This is clearly a time where I think the number is appropriate.
You wanted to read more than 2 committees.
Correct.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Question?
Did you say that at the meeting?
Yes, I did.
I remember you saying it, but you said so.
Mr. Gross, do we have a vote on the amendment and then vote on the minutes?
Yes.
I've never had this before.
Well, normally it's just accepted that someone saying that that's what they said at the meeting, the board would accept that as a change in the minutes, and then just vote on the entire minutes. You don't need to actually vote on the amendment of the minutes, but in this particular case, if there's a concern as to whether it was actually said or not, then you should have more discussion about that. But there should really just be one vote on the minutes itself as requested.
As amended.
The other correction I note is also where it says that Mr. Collins is giving the committee roster. It said 2016 to 2017 calendar year. Yeah, and it really is the 2017 roster.
Yes, that typo was already discussed today, and this was modified.
It was modified already in the minutes. That agenda item was already modified. So there's no reason to amend that in your motion.
And the motion is that to amend it to read, Ms. Diliberto was concerned that she was not on more than 2 committees.
That's correct.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. Diliberto?
Yes.
Mrs. Diliberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Arnello?
Yes.
Mr. Arnello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
No.
Mrs. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Colvin?
No. President's report, I did neglect to say something before, and I'm gonna say it now. We did have this weekend a short conference tournament, and I did want to pass along congratulations to one former Rocket, Coach Tunnels, being inducted into the Short Conference Association Hall of Fame. I think that was an outstanding achievement, and I also want to offer my congratulations to another district employee, Principal John Verderosa, for also being inducted into the Wrestling Short Conference Association Wrestling Hall of Fame. That's a big deal. These are two Moving on to Secretary's report.
Nothing to report?
Moving right on to finance. Letter F, A through F, pages 2 through 4. Is there a motion?
So offered, Mr. President.
Motion by Mrs. Dina Diliberto. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Lori O'Leary. Questions or comments?
I don't know, since I'm new, this is where I put it in, as far as like voting, yes, later on, I wasn't here for, December 19th, general part of the meeting, or the executive, and so there, when do I do an abstain on that part of the meeting?
Should have noted for that.
Should have done it.
Mr. Barrett, I assume you want to do the same thing?
I'm sorry?
Abstain on December minutes since you weren't on board then?
Yes.
What does that make the vote on the minutes?
5-2.
Any other questions on finance?
Could I just make a comment on that? I think we're talking, the amendment that I made was from January 3rd's minutes, not the December 19th, so I think.
Just so you know, we've already moved past that.
Yeah.
You're not talking about that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments on finance? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Abstain?
On finance? No, you can vote on finance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Diliberto?
Yes.
Mrs. Diliberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Arnello?
Yes.
Mr. Arnello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Ms. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. Moving on, page 4, personnel. We have three changes to the agenda as well.
If you go to letter O, on page, if you go to letter O for the leave replacement for Sean Holleran, that's gonna change to effective date of February 13th, and the transition day will be February 10th. That's because the teacher who's replacing is going out earlier. If you go to letter X, the part-time softball coach, she is asked to have her name removed because she got employment elsewhere. So Kimberly will come off. And then we requested to add a intern to be able to be in here because they have, we were gonna wait till next month, but if we don't put her on for the hours, she won't complete them before the end of the year. So it's be resolved that the board approve Ashley Vendevine, a Monmouth University student, to complete her 100 hours of social worker internship under the supervision of Chris Dan St. Paul for the remainder of the 16-17 school year, as recommended by the superintendent, and that would be dropped in as letter Z.
Can I ask a question? We have to make the motion first.
Motion second.
Is there a motion with the changes? Motion by Mr. Lamb, is there a second?
I'll
Second by
second.
Mr. Barrett. Questions or comments?
I do, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Cruz.
Mr. Mullins, Kimberly is no longer gonna be an assistant softball coach, she's taken off.
Correct.
Okay, and we're paying Samantha, is that a regular stipend for a regular coach?
That's a regular stipend for an assistant coach, and then the other one was a halftime. So we still have the one full-time assistant on there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, clarification on, you said letter O?
Yes.
Okay, because on my letter O, it didn't have the name of the person that you were referring to.
Be resolved that the board approve the intern of employment.
Sean Holleran.
Broke it up right there.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Then I'm good.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mrs. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb? Ms. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. Moving on to page 7. Sorry, page 8. Student activities, letter A. Is there a motion?
So offered.
Motion by Dina DiLiberto, second by Ms. Lori O'Leary. Questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mrs. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb? Ms. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. Professional development, letter A, pages 8 through 9. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Lamb. I don't always, can't hear you, so speak up. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Grossman. Questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mrs. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb? Ms. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. On page 9, facilities and transportation, letter A. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Lamb,
Second.
second by Ms. Dina DiLiberto. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mrs. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb? Mrs. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. Policy, letter A. Is there a motion? First reading.
I'll offer.
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second. Second by Ms. O'Leary. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mrs. DiLiberto?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Einello?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Leary?
Yes.
And Mr. Culvers?
Yes. Superintendent's report, pages 8 through 13. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Lamb. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Grossman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This time, we'll move on to page 14, citizens' comments. Anyone who'd like to address the board? Hold on one second, I skipped a page. I'm sorry, it's way down the bottom. Move on to board discussion and committee updates. Any board discussion?
I have some issues, Mr. President. Okay, first thing I'd like to propose is that we have one or two think it's too late in the game to be gathering comments from the community.
When do we have our meeting in the game?
Sometime around April. Typically the end of April.
Before we vote?
I'm talking about the public meeting on the budget, it's typically the third week of April.
And that's before the board votes, right?
It's too late in the game for comments that the community may have if they would impact changes to the budget.
But the community still has an opportunity to talk before we vote. I just want to be clear. You just want it to be 2 times, not 1.
No, I want it to be earlier in the year, preferably during the finance committee's budget deliberations, so that we can hear what kinds of issues are going on. I have certain questions I'd like to ask tonight related to the budget myself. And I just think that we should have a more open process similar to what our township does and what other school districts are doing. It's just a good thing to do.
Duly noted. Any other questions?
No, I would say I agree with it.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I'd like to continue with that and say, and ask, what are the budget parameters for this year? Are we looking at, no increase, 1% increase, 2% increase?
Mr. Mullins?
The budget is currently still at the committee level process. At the committee level process, it doesn't come to the full board, nor is it discussed at the public meeting this time.
However, the committee, and I learned this from my level 2 finance training, the committee cannot set those parameters. The board has to set those parameters. The committee then takes those parameters and then divides the budget that the board would then ultimately approve.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. What parameters? You said set the parameters. What
We
parameters?
should have goals that the full board would approve for what we want to spend money on and what the parameters would be in terms of, an increase to taxpayers.
Dr. Bragan, do we have district goals? We do.
Do we
Mr.
have
Gross, do we
budget goals?
fulfill that? Mr. Gross, do we fulfill by having budget goals our requirement to have goals?
Those are probably the parameters.
Thank you.
The parameters, I believe, would be, are we looking to do, what kind of an increase are we looking to have on the budget, given our district goals,
That's
given
not
our
a goal.
goals?
That's not a goal.
What's the difference between a goal and a parameter?
The parameter is gonna specify how much money we're looking at to accomplish those goals. So are we looking at a 1% increase to the taxpayers, a 2% increase to the taxpayers, 3% percent increase to the taxpayers? That needs to be determined before you start sitting down writing a budget.
Okay, that's not a goal.
It's not a goal.
And that is why we hire administrators to work with our other administrators, using our district goals to come up with parameters to set the budget. That isn't I'm finished. That isn't what the Board of Education's individual role as a member is.
I disagree with that because based on the level 2 training, I specifically asked, is that something that just the finance committee would be deciding? And they specifically told me that a committee cannot make decisions because it's not a quorum, and therefore the full board is supposed to approve the parameters prior to a budget being constructed.
The committee doesn't make decisions, that is correct. However, and has been the practice for, now this is my 12th budget, the committee develops the budget and then presents it to the board, and then the board does make the full decision. So the committee had a half-hour meeting today, they were presented the budget packet, we discussed it, we reviewed it. They now have the time to review the line-by-line details. We will discuss it once again at the February Finance Committee meeting, which is still prior to the state aid to come out from the governor. And then the governor's state aid will come out early in March, where then we can then have a further discussion on it. To try and set a parameter of a tax rate without knowing all your variables would be kind of difficult, because to come out and say that we're gonna set a tax rate at 1, 2, or 14% without knowing what the state aid's gonna be, or without knowing what the expenditures are, is kind of putting the cart before the horse.
With all due respect, I disagree. I think if I would ask this question in a township committee meeting, I would probably get a better response. Okay? I'm just going by what my training told me to ask, all right? Now, moving forward, I also want to state for the record that because we have taxpayers in this room, each and every single one of us on this board represents the taxpayers.
Really?
And having,
You said so.
I'm gonna do some math here, having 13 committees and 9 board members, if you do the math, you get 52 spots on the committee. If you take 52 and divide by 9, that's roughly 5 or 6 committees per board member. But for this year, we have some board members on 8 or 9 committees, and we have other board members, such as myself, only on two committees. And I would tell you that that is highly an unfair representation of 9 board members supposed to be working for taxpayers. And I would like that noted on the minutes.
She sounds like a petulant 2-year-old.
Duly noted. Any other questions or comments, discussions? Moving on to legislative update.
Not that it affects us here directly, because we do not have bus drivers as employees, but as the board has heard, there have been concerns about the difficulty of bus companies getting bus drivers. Right now, there are 2 bills on the governor's desk for his signing that should ease up the ability to get the CDL license for bus drivers, which should make it easier for the bus companies, hopefully reduce the rates we pay and make it better for our ability to get bus rates. There are times where we can't get drivers for field trips, or if we have some emergency situations with having to move students, we do sometimes run into some problems. It has been difficult for a driver to get a license because I believe it's 28 things they have to be able to assign on a bus, including where an alternator is, to be able to drive a bus and save the voltage on the alternator. So that bill that is sitting there should not ease it that the drivers will be a lower level of a driver, but they'll have less administrative necessities, and it should help us moving forward. That's just it.
Thank you, Mr. Mullin. At this time, we'll move on to citizens' comments. Anyone who'd like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address. 2 3-minute statements may be made. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic, though all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. Good evening.
Good evening. How you guys doing? My name is Joe Zazzarino. I live at 45 Hudson Avenue.
Spell your last name.
Zazzarino. Now, I've lived in Hazlet for over 25 years, and I've sat on board meetings in other towns, other businesses and whatnot. And I sat in a board meeting with you as well for our PTO. And I just have a few questions for you. You took a lot of notes, learned a lot from tonight, and I appreciate you looking out for our taxpayers, and that's very, very important to me. Let's see, you said a couple things about you represent us taxpayers. You live in Hazlet, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Cool. I was wondering then, how can you be on the board? And I was looking at, just because we've had the meeting already before, looked up some of your past history here, and I was wondering, when was the last time you paid a real estate tax to the Hazlet Township? And without paying the taxes to the Hazlet Township, how can you represent the people if you're not a part of our people? So for you to bring up all these very important notes about your training and the level 2 finance training you had, you should be able to figure out that if you live in the town, you need to make sure you're paying the taxes, correct? Okay, so I need you to understand how can you represent us if you're not us?
I would answer that by saying to you that taxes are currently paid, okay?
Okay.
They're not necessarily paid by me, but there's a tax lien. I'm sure that everybody in this room has gone through financial issues.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that by the end of this year, they will be paid in full by me as well.
Okay, then another good question I have is, you wasted a lot of my time at the last PTO meeting I sat with you at, and my time is precious. I came here not to waste anybody else's time, but just to get a point across. You need to make sure that all your facts are good to go, because there's a lot of public record out there that shows that you haven't paid your taxes, and how can you be, there's a tax lien like you said on your house, and with your finance background, I would think that as a business person, you would have your finances squared up correctly. Always have a backup plan. So please, moving forward, when you're judging the rest of the township and how we deal with our finances,
30 seconds.
please make sure you have a backup plan for when you discuss this with the rest of the board. These are trained professionals. Let the professionals be professionals. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did see Mr. Day. Good evening.
Kathleen Gotay, I'm president of the Hazlet Township Education Association. And on behalf of the association, I'd like to welcome the new members, Mrs. DiLiberto and Mr. Barrett. And as part of the association, hope to continue having a working relationship with the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Kylie, good evening.
Good evening. Sue Kiley, 15 Tall Oaks Drive in Hazlet. The only reason I wanted to make a comment was because I have some good news and I want to give it to you early. Last year we decided to have a parade with Hazlet Day, but we decided kind of late in the year. And a lot of the principals had said if we had known sooner, you know, we might have done floats, we might have gotten the kids more involved. So I'm here to put it on record that we are having Hazlet Day and the Hazlet Day Parade on September 16th. And anybody that wants to work with me on, you know, on putting something together for the students, that would be a great thing.
Mayor, I'll be marching, and I'm sure some of my board members would like to march too. They did say they wanted to march that.
Duly noted. We will have you in the parade.
Can I ask a question?
I guess, it's your meeting.
We always did it when I was on recreation around Columbus. Why don't we do it around that time? Because it gives the schools more time to get everything together.
You know, we had talked about different dates, and the reason this came up and the reason I kind of pushed it with recreation was because I had marched in so many other town parades, but they were around Veterans Day and Columbus Day, and there were so many of them that we thought Hazlet Day might be a good option for us, because it's about who we are, who our students are, et cetera, et cetera. So that was
You
kind of
said
how the
September
decision was made.
16th, though.
That's right, September 16th.
When the schools are starting in the early part of September, though, will it gives them hardly enough time to read?
We're gonna get it out. I just talked to Superintendent, we'll get it out early to the principals. They're hearing it now, a lot of them.
We've already talked about it at PTO meetings
Okay,
too,
all
but I've just gotten the date, so I wanted to make sure it was on record.
Get the band, if they're not committed somewhere else, I'm sure.
We're working on that already.
Thank you, I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?